In this tutorial, we learn how to make graphs in Excel. Data can be presented in several ways, among which includes graph. And graph is particularly important because it helps in the visual presentation of your data. We have an example of data collected from voting that were done by males and females in several voting centers. So we want to plot a graph for this data, and you do that by first selecting the data, click dragging it to select the data, and you click on insert. You come to the chart section and you find several ways that you can plot your data. We would use a 2D graph for this scenario, and that display the data that we have. The male are represented in blue bars and the female are represented in red bars. There are several changes that you can make to your graph, and that includes a title, adding a title. So we can add a title of a graph or male and female voting. You can also include a horizontal axis and a vertical axis to describe what you have there. And you do that by left clicking on the graph, and that gives you this big plus sign. You left click on the plus sign and you see several options. So the axis has already been checked, and that is why we saw the axis. There is also a box, a checkbox for the axis titles. So we would check that box so that we can include an axis title on our graph. And you can also have error bars. You can include the data table on your graph, and you can include data labels and others. We will just include only the axis titles just to simplify our graphing and also for illustration. So yeah, so we have the horizontal axis displayed, and that represents the voting centers. And our vertical axis represents the number of votes or frequency of votes. One other thing is you want your graph to appear as clear as possible, and you can do that by getting rid of the grid lines. You simply right click on the grid lines, you go to format grid lines, and you select no line. We don't want to see any line. You can also deepen your horizontal axis and your vertical axis. In mine, the vertical axis is not even showing at all. So that needs to be done. You first left click to select your horizontal line, and you right click, then you go to format axis, and we want to see the solid line showing. So under the line area, you click on the solid line, and that gives you the solid line. And you can change the color to your preference. I would use black. I think that reduces the fanciness of the graph. Yes. And we would repeat the same for the vertical section. Okay. Now you can also use your mean values to plot your graph instead of having all the data displayed on a graph. And you do that by first calculating for your mean in Excel. You can calculate for the mean by first clicking on the box that you want to make the calculation on. You start with an equal to sign, and the function we want to perform is get the average, and you select what we want to get the average of, and you click enter, and that gives us the average. You do the same for the female. So we have equal to average, then we click and drag on the cells we want to select and click on enter. So these are the mean values. You select what you want to plot. So we want to plot the mean values, and also we want to get the titles. We want to get the male and the female showing. So you can click on the control key and hold it, and simultaneously click drag on the vote male and female. Then you release the control key and you click on insert, get to the chart, and you select your 2D column, and that gives you your graph. We can perform same changes. So the heading, mean of male and female votes, and we want to get the as-is description. So you left click on the graph, click on the plus, and check the as-is titles, and that is what we have. So we have the vertical showing the number of votes, the horizontal showing gender, male and female. We want to get rid of the grid lines. So left click to select the grid lines, then you right click again, left click to select the grid lines, and you right click, select format grid lines, and we don't want to see any grid lines. So under the line, you select no line, and that takes away the grid lines. We want to have a solid line for our horizontal and vertical axis. So do that by selecting the horizontal and vertical axis, right click on it, select format axis, and under the fill and line section, under the line section, select solid line. We want to have a solid line, and we want the color to be black. Okay, I want the color to be black, and you do the same for this. Okay, and that gives another beautiful data that you can present. So from this graph, we can see that the average number of females that voted were more than the number of males that voted. And that brings us to the end of